Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. This is Vivian, and I'm going to be muting everybody now so that we can start our presentation. So welcome, everybody. This is our talk in our native plant lecture series. I'm Vivian New, the chapter president of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the California Native Plant Society. And we're so happy to have all of you here tonight. I just realized I don't have my video on, so let me do that. I'm really interested in knowing how many first timers we have out there. So if you are here for the first time, if you don't mind just putting down in the chat that you're here, and we'd also love to know how you found out about our talk. And so I want to welcome everybody, first timers, and those of you who've been here before and our chapter members. We're really thrilled to have everybody with us today. Oops, what's going on here? And if you are not familiar with the California Native Plant Society, we are a nonprofit environmental organization, and we span the entirety of California and down into Baja across the border with 35 chapters and over 10,000 members. And our chapter covers Santa Clara Valley, the Santa Clara Valley chapter covers Santa Clara County and southern San Mateo County. And our goal is to save California's native plants and their habitats. And we do that through science, education, conservation, and gardening. So we hope you are interested, if you are not currently a member, in joining us. And membership benefits, in addition to just supporting our mission, will give you these two amazing journals, Flora and Fremont, which is actually going to be renamed shortly. One's a more science-oriented one, and the other one has a lot of really great general interest articles about California native plants. You'll also receive, as a member of our chapter newsletter, The Blazing Star, which gives you information about our events and all kinds of other things that are going on. And you also get discounts at supporting nurseries and a lot more. So if you are not currently a member and you're interested in joining us, just go to cnps.org/join, and there'll be a form there for you to sign up online. And we have a lot of talks coming up, as well as some other activities. Next week, we have Dr. Tim Krantz, who's going to be talking about saving wildflowers, how to be a more effective rare plant advocate. And we're actually offering this talk in conjunction with our neighbors to the East Bay chapter of CNPS. Following that, we're going to have our monthly photography group meeting, where you can either come if you're not a photographer and just want to look at pretty plant pictures, or if you are a photographer and you want to share your pictures, you're welcome to join the group and show your pictures. And you can find out more about that on our site, cnps-scv.org. Following that, we have the first of our garden tour, and that one is going to be the Meadowlands Garden, which is in San Jose, and that's given by, and I always stumble over his name, so I'm just going to say the name that we call him, which is KK. It's an amazing garden in San Jose, tons of ceanothus. If you haven't seen it, you really should go to that one. Then we have Native Plant Pollinators by Juanita Salisbury on April 7th. And then the week after that, Gardening for Native Bees with John Kehoe. And we will have more things coming up. So if you are interested, you can find out more information on our website, cnps-scv.org, meetup, or you can also join our chapter news list and have that information delivered right to your mailbox. It's just one message a week, and it gives you all the latest and greatest that the chapter is doing. You can get that email address to join by going to our website, cnps-scv.org. And you just send an email to that email address that's listed on this slide, or you can easily find it on our website as well. And our nursery is open, well, it will be open for sales again next week on Monday. Right now you can go to it, it's online, and you can go to it and browse and see what we have in, well, we are re-inventorying, which is why you can't order right now. But you can go on there and see what kinds of plants we have in stock. And then next Monday, you can actually order them. And after you've ordered them, you can either make an appointment to pick them up at our nursery or arrange to have them delivered if you live between Belmont and San Jose. And in addition to plants, we have t-shirts, the Going Native Garden Tour t-shirts. We have a variety of books and those native plant live here signs, as well as other things. So check it out. And oh yeah, and that is also another way to support our chapter, because all the proceeds from every sale at our nursery go to support our chapter. And if you are enjoying these talks and you are comfortable using a keyboard, mouse, and just switching windows and copying and pasting, and you would like to help us out, we are looking for more volunteers to help. So there are two positions in particular, the QA moderator. So tonight we have Madeline Morrow in that role, and a YouTube moderator. We have Arvind Kumar in that role here tonight, but we would love to have more people helping us out. There's also what I'm doing, which is introducing the talks. And if you're interested in doing that, we'd love to have people to do that as well. So if any of those things appeal to you, you can either get a hold of Madeline or Johanna Kwan, and their contact information is there at the bottom of the slide. It's also available on our website, on our officers and chairs page. So let us know, because we would absolutely love to have you join our group. And before we go into the talk, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping details. Those of you who are on YouTube are probably already aware of this, and those of you on Zoom should be aware that we are simulcasting on YouTube, and that means that it's being recorded, because it will be available on YouTube for viewing pretty much immediately after the talk is over. So this talk is being recorded, and as I say on the slide, please make sure your mics are muted. If you have any questions, just type them into the chat box. We have people monitoring. That's what the QA moderator and the YouTube monitor do. So it doesn't matter if you're on YouTube or on Zoom, just type your questions at any point in time into the chat, and our YouTube monitor will make sure that, our QA moderator will make sure that Paul gets them. And so now our main event, we have Paul Heiple here to talk about growing and appreciating California succulents, both in gardens and in the wild. And Paul is pretty much, he's a sort of an amazing person. He is the Grassroots Ecology Botanist Emeritus. He's a retired petroleum geologist, and he spent his career exploring for oil in the Williston Basin of North Dakota. But now he focuses on Jasper Ridge and the Pearson-Arastradero Preserve and Edgewood. He served as the chair of our chapter's conservation committee, he served as the chair of the conservation committee for the Town of Portola Valley, the co-chair of the San Mateo County Weed Management Area, and as our chapter's treasurer. Sorry, got the wrong position for our chapter. He's active with the California Invasive Plant Council. He mentors local Boy Scout troops, and he leads the long-running Weed Warrior effort at Edgewood Park and Natural Preserve, which is an amazing serpentine grassland near Redwood City. If you haven't been there, you really should visit it. And now, Paul, I am going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I'm going to be talking about some of our great native plants that we have that can be used in the garden or in a greenhouse. Whoops. All right, what's going on now? Okay, this is interesting. It was before it advanced and now it won't. I'm going to stop and start again. Okay, it appears that I'm be able to do it with the mouse, so I'm going to do it that way. So what is a succulent? They call them fat plants. They store water in their leaves, stems, or roots, or any combination of the three, which is an interesting thing for a plant. All of them are passive water movers. All plants have no pumps. So how do these plants manage to stick all that water inside? Well, they use hydroscopic chemicals, which make the water migrate from the ground up the root and into the plant and fill it up. There's no clear line, by the way, between a succulent and a non-succulent. I mean, there's obvious ones, but there are ones that actually switch back and forth depending on how the seasons go and how they're, what conditions they're living in. So sometimes you'll go out and see a plant that's storing extra water, and sometimes it will not be doing that. So what are the advantages of being a succulent plant? Well, it stores water for the dry times ahead. I call it a gulp and glide strategy. It's the ability to pull the water from salty soils. You can go down to the baylands and see pickleweed. It has the ability to actually pull the water out of salt areas. And they can even pull a little bit of the water out of damp air on nights when there are dews. And most of them are CAM plants, which is crassulent acid metabolism. This is a method by which they can take carbon dioxide and store it, and then use it for photosynthesis when the light's out. Photosynthesis stops on other plants when they don't have any carbon dioxide. So here's the 3 or 4 types of succulents. There's leaf succulents, that would be the Dudleya. Stem succulent, that would be something like Lewisia rediviva. The caudex, they form a special water storing organ. And stem succulent, the cacti is a stem succulent. And the root succulent is the rediviva. It's also a leaf succulent. Sometimes you'll get ones that will have multiple types. And where are succulents found? Well, it's where liquid water is scarce or difficult to get, at least at some time of the year. It's places like deserts, rocky areas, mountaintops. Others are epiphytes. They grow on plants and only get water when it rains, and salty areas. Come on. I was going to mention, by the way, that our Mediterranean climate in the Bay Area doesn't qualify well for succulents for the reason that we get too much rain at one season and then too long a glide period. So it really isn't an advantage to be a succulent here. They like places where the rain comes in the summer, is thunderstorms, and not so much in the winter. So one of the good groups of succulents for the garden are the cacti. California has 9 genera and 31 species. Many are large and not good for this area. If you get a ferrocactus, they can be many feet tall. And none are native above the transverse range, except for one, which is up in the Shasta Valley. and that's Puntia fragilis. Come on. The cacti that are good for the gardens, or things for our garden at least, are Mammillaria dioica. It grows in the Baja area up into San Diego. The Opuntia basilaris, the Echinocerius trigloccidatus, and the Echinocerius engelmannii, which is pictured here. And location is important for cacti. Since we get so much rain in the winter, you want to find a location where they are protected from that rain. And here we have a cactus in a pot that's been there now for 10 years. This side of the house, it rarely blows the rain in during the winter to hit this cactus. So it remains pretty well dried out all winter long. And then in spring, I start watering it and it just does beautifully. Here it is in flower. This is not a native one, unfortunately. This is a Mexican cactus. Lewisia, there are 16 species in California. There's one in the Bay Area, and this is it. This is Lewisia rediviva. And most are up in the northern Sierras and over in the foothills of the Sierras. Here's rediviva growing at, I think this is Edgewood. Yeah, there's a couple of them at Edgewood. They grow in the serpentinite. This one is from Kite Hill, which is a little place in Woodside. This is the flower. Another nice one is Lewisia cotyledon. This one is very available in nurseries. In fact, the nurserymen have bred this for variable flowers. You can get all kinds of shades and flowers on these. And here's a picture of the typical form growing in a pot. They like sun. You want to make sure that they're getting sun or they won't bloom. Another one I have grown is Lewisia cantalovia. It's got these interesting sawtooth leaves and this cloud of pretty flowers that come up above it. Come on. And so I think this is, oh, I thought I had a, no, I don't. Another one is Lewisia leonia. This one is a habitat picture up in the Siskiyous. It is a tight rosette of succulent leaves with, once again, a cloud of pretty little pink flowers. Some of them probably are not really something you'd want to grow in the garden. This is Lewisia triphylla. It's a very, very common plant. If you go up into the Sierras or the coast ranges, you'll find this growing in wet spots. Another group that's really nice for the garden are sedums. And sedums, there are 16 species in California, 2 native locally, and those 2 local ones for the Bay Area are Spathifolium and radiatum. This is a cultivar of Spathifolium. If you go to nurseries, you will find numerous different forms of Spathifolium for sale for your garden. Close up of it. Here's another form. Come on. And this is, this is a habitat picture at Woods Road. Woods Road has this fantastic place along it where the sedums just grow really, really, really thick. This one is at little San Mateo Canyon, growing on greenstone. And sometimes if you look in the group, you'll find this little one. This is the radiatum growing in there. It's hard to see. Here it is growing in pots at home. This is an oddball for a plant. It's listed in Jepson as an annual because what it does is the entire stems and roots die and just the tips remain alive, and they drop to the soil like a seed. And when the rains come in the fall, they grow back into a plant. Now that it's still the same plant it was before, but it lost its stems and roots instead of losing its leaves and its top. Here it is, radiatum in flower. Kind of a cute one. If you go up to the Siskiyous, there's Sedum divergens. This is readily available in the trade. It's also known as old man's bones because the leaves go at right angles and it looks like the ends of bones. This is a habitat picture. Here's some of it growing in a pot. You notice I don't quite get the beautiful red color because it's not as stressed as it is up in the Siskiyous. Another one is Sedum oregonum, a really beautiful species, nice waxy looking leaves. And here is Sedum lanceolatum. This one I tried to grow. This one grows at high elevations in the Siskiyous and also in the Sierras in exposed areas. I have a feeling that these are growing in places where the wind blows the snow off the ground during the winter. And the reason I can't grow it, I can't get this cold enough in the winter to keep it alive. It needs a winter to survive. But somebody who lives in a really cold climate probably could grow this one. Sedum oblanceolatum. It's growing up in the Siskiyous again in cracks and rocks. Probably also needs a good winter. Whoops. Okay, yeah. And here's what can happen. This is San Mateo Canyon again. And you'll notice the sedum mixing in with its parasitic Orbanchi. This is uniflora. And it also has other native plants in here mixing up. I'm trying to think. I think this is a mimulus here. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place to go and see the mix of plants. And here is the radiatum growing up there in the moss. You can see it side by side with spathifolium. Another shot of the, oh, and this has the Roman zophia in it. Here's the flower of Roman zophia. Here are the leaves. And also ferns. Just a nice place to go look. Now we're getting to the genus of Dudleyas. There are 26 species in California, at least 4 local species. It's highly variable. This is a plant that if you go from one place to another, you can see differences and often think, well, isn't this the different species? Not necessarily. It's almost entirely confined to the California floristic province, but there's some real surprises on this. One species makes it into Arizona, and one of that ones make it up to southern Utah. They found it in the Beaver Mountains of Utah. It grows up at least as high as 6,000 feet. I have seen it that high. I've heard that it grows higher, but I have never seen it that much higher. So it is cold hardy to an extent if you get the right species. And that would be Simosa. This is, by the way, a issue that the Cactus and Succulent Society of America put out totally on Dudleyas. If you can get your hands on it and you're interested in Dudleyas, this has a ton of information about them, about the hybridization, growing. just a really good source of information. It is out of print now, so I don't know if you can get it. How did I get started growing Dudleyas? Well, we used to have a big flower show that I would be involved in, and they would go out and collect all the flowers from all over the place. And one of the things they collected were Dudleyas. And when I saw that, I said, you know, I can take this home and grow it and bring it back year after year. So I did that, and I collected others. They're really easy from seed. Dudleyas, just if you get an old flower head and you tap it, you will often find a few seeds in it. The seeds are easy to germinate and grow into a nice plant. You can also find roadkills. You can also find friends who have Dudleyas and get cuttings. So you can end up with a pretty good collection of Dudleyas. I also then added sedums. What else did I think I brought a few cacti and other things. I really like succulents, so it's not surprising that this would be a good group to grow in my greenhouse. I also grow this in the garden. This is a picture of a Dudleya that is grown in my garden for years with no care. It is, I'll get to it later, but I just wanted to show you that picture. There are 3 subgenera to Dudleyas. There's the subgenus Dudleya. This is Stenophyllum and the Hyacinthus. So this is the Stenophyllum. They have elongated leaves. Their flowers tend to be open. This is the subgenus Dudleya here. They tend to have wider leaves, flat rosettes, and their flowers tend to be tubular. And then the Hyacinthus group is the weirdest of all. They have no stem above ground. They are corm-like stems underground. They die off in the summer all the way to the ground. They look like there's nothing left. And they have the ability to do something none of the others do. If you take a leaf cutting, you can grow a new plant. All these others, you have to do either seeds or stem cuttings. These, a leaf cutting will work. And here I can show you the Hyacinthus group. Here are the leaf cuttings. You can see the little tiny start coming up from the side here and little plants that have come up from other leaves. I had several species in this. This one is multicaulis. This one is one of the weirder ones. This is Dudleya Lockmanii. And this is the typical flower for it here, is these open white flowers. Here's the subgenus Dudleya. Here we have a cymosa. This is a Dudleya. This is actually a fairly rare one. Dudleya, blanking out on it. It's stoloniferous. That's stoloniferous. So it's Dudleya stolonifera. And this one is greenii. This is that garden one again. This one is a Orchidea attenuata. It's found actually quite far south. It barely makes it into California. It's very common in Baja, but in southern parts of San Diego County, it's native there. Oh, I should mention that if you do work with Dudleyas, they will break your heart, because when you try to go and figure out what they are, it's very difficult. The key is difficult. The plants are difficult. Every place you go, they're going to be different. You have to get used to the idea that there's variation and you're not going to be able to figure it all out. Even the experts have a lot of trouble with this. Say, for instance, these 4. We have here a sample of Dudleyas going across the valley. So this is Dudleya cymosa cymosa. This is Dudleya abramsii, variety paniculata. This is a cymosa paniculata, and this is a paniculata. This one happens to be from Co. This one's from up in the Diablo area. Can you tell the difference between them? The big differences come in when you start seeing the flowers. This has a nice orange tubular flower. Succulent has the typical cream colored flower and very upright stems. However, the real trick on abramsii versus the cymosa is if you get your magnifying glass out and look at the base of the petal, there's a little tooth on the abramsii, which isn't on the cymosas. And of course, then these two have that cream colored flower like the abramsii, but they're cymosas. And here is paniculata in flower. You can see that the flower is a very light cream color. The basis looks like a good cymosa. It doesn't look like an abramsii as much. And here's Succulent, abramsii Succulent, growing in the wild. They have a greater tendency to lose their lower leaves when they're going to be blooming, but the flowers are upright and still the same color. I couldn't get a picture of that little tooth. I don't have a camera that would really take it. And here's cymosa, a typical cymosa over in the western side of the valley. And then there's this. This is found in the Santa Cruz Mountains, just in the western part. And for years, this location has been known. These plants have been known. And we figured they must be a new species. I gave some to Steve McCabe, and he agreed. It's a bit stoloniferous. It'll grow new plants off the base rather than the typical Dudleya will get new rosettes by having the rosette split. This one grows new ones out the base. The flowers are bulbous and very waxy. And you can see their habitat is growing in this thick moss. There's another abramsii Succulent. By the way, within 3 miles, or 1 mile, I'm sorry, I took this picture, and this picture. This is one of these fun places up in Coyote Ridge where the Dudleyas are growing in like little flower pots. This is serpentinite, but the fractures in the serpentinite filled up with silica, so they tend not to go away, and they need these nice little holes, and the Dudleyas like to grow in them, protected from the cattle. Here's a typical cymosa from further north. Now we're going out to the coast. This is Dudleya farinosa at, I believe I took these in Point Lobos. They are just gorgeous. You can get huge plants that are just enough to wish you could have it, but nope, better to have it out there in the wild. And growing with them is the cespitosa. Look at the difference. Whoops. These do not have that bright red stem. The rosette is different. And they grow in different places. This one grows more in the grass and better soil. The other one's growing right on rock. This is a cespitosa. Now, hard to believe that and that are the same plant. This is down on the Big Sur coast. You find them looking like this. Close up of it. It really looks like a stenophyllum, because the leaves are very elongate and almost a tube-like, but it isn't. It's subgenus Dudleya. Okay, I went up on into the Ventana wilderness, and I came upon a marble outcrop, and here are some cymosas growing up there. These have a white center and very little red. I don't know what they look like blooming because I never went back to look at them. But that's a really nice Dudleya. Whether that would keep that form in the garden or not, I'm not certain. Okay, this is I am now down in Thousand Oaks area. This is on Conejo Mountain. This is a great place for succulents. You can see the Dudleyas along the side here, but you see what this is? This is a giant coreopsis growing over here. It's one of the places where they come on land, on the mainland. And also cactus there, and sticky monkey flowers. There are, I think, 5 species of Dudleyas that grow on this mountain. This is one of them, Puviar lente. That's a big plant. I didn't get a picture of it, but up on the mountain, there was one that was the size of a dinner plate on the side of the stone. It was almost exactly perpendicular from the upright, and it had 5 of the inflorescences coming up, and the flowers on this are red. So this is a really gorgeous plant, especially in habitat. This is one that's a rare plant. Apparently a fire killed most of them. This is Vertii. It has, this was in seed at the time. They grow in the cracks of this volcanic rock. This is another one. This is Dudleya parva. This one is odd. It is in the Dudleya group, but like the ones in the Hasianthus group, this one dies back to the ground, completely nothing above ground after it's finished blooming. Okay, I did not get Blockmanii on this mountain, and the other one, one other one I never did find that one, but there are, like I said, 5 species on that mountain to look for. This is Farinosa as it looks up on San Bruno Mountain. San Bruno's mountains have these lovely red areas with the white in the center. Now I'm up in Walker Valley, and if you go up there, or Walker Ridge, you get these combinations of the Dudleyas and the Dudleyas growing together and blooming at the same time. This Dudleya is a cymosa, but it's very different looking flowers. This one was growing on the road below in Bear Valley. Then I found this cymosa on the road to Hetch Hetchy. Looks completely different than all the other cymosas, but it's still a cymosa. It has very interesting flowers. You can see they're very bulbous, very small opening. I would have called that a different species, but it's not, according to them. Here's a picture of the kind of rock garden you get with Dudleyas, where they're growing a crack between the rocks in the moss. So now that you've had the entertainment of seeing lots of Dudleyas in the wild, what does succulents need for your garden? Well, well-drained medium is very important for almost all succulents. An elevated mound will keep them from catching too much water. If you have a very rainy, it won't pool, it will drain off out of the mound. Rocky mixes are best. You know, well-drained, rocky sand, coarse sand. Avoid locations with hot, direct summer sun because a lot of our Dudleyas do grow on the north sides of slopes. Do not water in the summer months. Your Dudleyas will look terrible, but that's what they're supposed to do. They will be happier and live longer if you let them dry out. You might want to keep them a little misting or something if they start to look really bad, but many of mine just, dry up almost completely. You would not know they were alive. And then when I start watering them again in the fall, out they come. You don't want to let plants be overgrown by other plants. Dudleyas don't like a lot of shade. You have to keep other plants from overcovering them or they will die out. My standard mixture for succulent growing is 4 parts 120 grade sand. You can buy this at Linkso or, well, if you don't have Linkso, any place where they have graded sand. They put it through a sieve and they will give you the grade. I use 2 parts of organic material and 1 part of granite chips, about 1/4 size. This is Dudleya noma, which is a really cool species that grows down on the Channel Islands. It tends to get lots of heads, multiplied by having the rosettes grow apart. This is the inflorescence coming out, and they just kind of flow on long stems as they grow. Yeah, I didn't put the name on this one. I'm sorry, I didn't. But this is a, now I forget what it is. I should put the name on it. This is a Simosa. This is Blockmanii. How weird it grows. It gets these long leaves with a little tip on them. Here's what it looks like in flower. Notice that the basal leaves are gone in flower, and you just have the colline leaves. This is multicaulis, growing in early spring. Here's another good one. This is Dudleya viscosa. Viscida. This one is odd in that it has sticky leaves. And what the stickiness does, it captures little bits of sand and dust. And actually, unlike most Dudleyas, this one doesn't form its own wax to protect itself from the sun. It does it by catching the particles of sand and dirt. This has also evolved in ice plants and in cacti. There are species that do this same thing by trapping the sand and dust to give themselves some shade. And here's stolonifera showing you what stolons look like. So here's the main rosette, and growing out of the stem below that rosette will be new ones, and they can grow nice long stems. You can cut these off, root them, and have more plants. And stolonifera is, by the way, a absolutely gorgeous plant. It's a rare plant. It grows down on Laguna Beach. It's the only place in the world it's found, but they are so easy from a little bit of seed. This pot and another pot over here, I got all of that from a little bit of seed from a dead seed head that I got from Phil Darlington. And from there, I've gotten just tons of plants. Seed is easy, often the only way to get new plants, because you do not want to collect these in the wild. There are people who go out and collect every Dudley out on a place and just ruin them. They go out and collect rare ones. You don't want to do that. You want to do something that is not going to damage the plants in the wild. And since they're so easy from seed, there is no excuse for people going out and collecting wild plants. You just need to get a little bit of seed and have a 2-year time when you grow them to adult plants. You sow them in the fall when the nights are cool on an organic rich mix, something that will hold the moisture. In the wild, they depend on moss and lichens to do that, and bottom water them so you don't disturb the seeds. Cuttings, you can cut the stem fall and winter and root them. You have new plants that way. And leaf cuttings from the Hyacinthus group. And that concludes my talk. This is a fly up in the siskiyous feeding on a Lewisia flower. And I will take questions now and stop sharing. Okay.
One of the questions was asking about which ones have, about which Dudleya or which succulents have good cold tolerance, particularly for Bishop.
Yes, I did look that up, and my problem is, of course, I'm living here in a place where I would not look for them, but that Sedum lanceolatum, and in fact, many of the sedums at high elevation, if you look in Jepson, look for the ones that are up around 2,000 to 3,000 meters. There are some cacti that come into the Mojave. One is the Mojaviensis, the Echinocerius mojaviensis. That one grows in Colorado. I have seen it in Utah. It is a great plant. It's called the claret cup because it has such bright red flowers and forms huge clumps. Takes many years, but it's a very worthwhile plant. So maybe some of the other Echinocerius that we grow in California, those would be available from the trade because they are popular plants for people to put in gardens. So you don't have to worry about them digging them up. They grow from seed. Just make sure you get them from a reputable dealer. Some of the sedums that you find up in the siskiyous, you can find the seed heads just like for the Dudleyas and try growing them from seed. I suspect I have not tried as many sedums from seed as I have from the Dudleyas because sedums often have multiple stems and you can just pick one out and grow it into a full pot.
Okay. We had another question about are all the Dudleyas native to California? And I wanted to have you, I was pretty sure that you said almost all, but.
No, there are quite a few that are south of the border in Baja that are not native to California. California is the center. In fact, where you find the largest diversity is probably around the Channel Islands and the mainland there. That's the center of diversity, but you can get down into Baja. In fact, as soon as you get to Tijuana, you start picking up the big, I'm trying to remember the name of that one. It has big rosettes all along the highway as you're going south. Wait, I can do that. I have my journal here, which has the list of species. And that would be, yeah. The Pachyphyllum is a really nice species that is in Baja on one of the islands.
So this gets to another question that was asked. Where are good places to buy a variety of Dudleyas?
That is difficult because there aren't very many that were in the trade, and you just have to know who's growing them. I know Steve McCabe grows large numbers of them, and they would be good. I'm trying to get that one. It's in Baja. I feed them to the nursery periodically. A lot of you may have, Bretonii, that's the one that's in Baja that's really nice. It does not
That's
come
a
up into
beautiful garden
California.
subject. And
Yeah.
I know some places to get, our California native plant nursery has Dudleyas, some species. There's a succulent place in, I believe it's in Half Moon Bay that has a decent number of Dudleyas. I've gotten Bretonii there. I will think of the name. And it's interesting because more Dudleyas are getting into the trade. You can go to a regular nursery from time to time and see a Dudleya.
Yeah. Where I got my Noma was somebody was making cuttings of it and calling it Little Sprite, didn't know what it was. And they were, of course, overwatering them, and they were all green and funny looking. And I dried them out and they turned into what they're supposed to look like.
And so, our chapter nursery, Santa Cruz CNPS has annual plant sales. I bought Dudleyas there. And I think there are some Dudleyas. There's a Dudleya at Annie's Annuals, 102. Annie's Annuals is growing some Dudleyas. If you go to Calscape, you can look up Dudleyas. It's an app that's available on the computer, and you can see where Dudleyas can be bought. You have to check out these nurseries because it's not like they're updating all the time, but some of them are available mail order and others are available locally. Okay, here's a question that I was actually going to say. Arvin says, I've killed many Lewisia, and I want to add in, I have killed many sedums. What are your tips for keeping them alive?
Okay, one thing with sedums, they do not like really rich soil. They're growing on rocks. So I water them with rainwater and very few nutrients. That seems to be the best thing to do for them. And let's see, Lewisias, they are a little bit, the drainage is the big thing there. I had a pot full of them I'd gotten from a friend, and I wasn't paying attention, and they rotted from the bottom. And mine in the well-drained soil is doing fine.
Okay, and Arvin posted, Arvin and Vivian posted Paul's well-draining potting soil for these things in the chat. Another question: should you peel off the dead-looking leaves each year or not?
Well, if you're a purist, you leave them on. If you're not, you groom your plant. As you saw on some of mine, I do pull the leaves off, and others I don't. So the stolonifera that I had, it was just loaded with leaves. Eventually I do cut them back, reroot them so that I don't have a really long stem. And that involves taking off the leaves. Dudleyas are one thing that you can tell from an echeveria, which looks, that actually Dudleyas used to be in the echeverias. Echeverias, when their leaves die, they fall off really easy. Dudleyas, they don't.
So, how big do Dudleyas get in nature? Do they do okay in containers? My experience is containers are the best place to grow them.
Yeah, here. But in the wild, I have seen Dudleyas. There was a place in Baja where there were Dudleyas that had 30-foot long stems and rosettes as big as a dinner plate. It was just amazing to see them. The places where they would get started were in the cracks in the rock. And over time, they would finally come out of the rock. The stem would come out of the rock, and then it would ramble across the ground, but forming multiple stems. It was amazing, Dudleya. The Pulverulente, like I said, dinner plate size things. They're huge. The first time I saw one, we were coming up from Manza Borrego, and it was, stop, what's that? Went over to look at it.
Okay, so how do you propagate the Dudleya species Pulverulente and Bretonii?
I do the Pulverulente from seed. The Britannia, grew some from seed, but I haven't made any seed from mine, so I don't have, I really haven't sold those because they're not natives. I only have a few of them. But once again, seed's really the way to go.
Okay. And once again, which are the local Dudleyas?
Okay. Our local?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Simosa, the Simosa, and the paniculata, Bramsii, Succulent. See, the unknown one. And I think, on the coast, Farinosa and Cespitosa.
Okay, and I just want to point out to everyone that we have a ton of places to buy Dudleyas in the chat. And if you look down at the bottom of those three dots, you can save the chat. If you click on those three dots, save the chat, you can make a copy of it so you don't have to, you can go through it and get those, the things that you want later. So, Labyrinth Maker wants you to please talk more about the little leaves on the flower stems. I'm not quite sure what plant that is in reference to. Was that Dudleyas or?
Yeah, maybe the colleen leaves. So the Dudleyas commonly have colleen leaves where as they're coming out, they change form and they're smaller and along the stem.
But those won't root. There's only one species of Dudley.
Well, only the ones in the Hasianthus group, and those are Blockmanii, Multicaulis, Nessiotica. Let me give you some other names. But those are a special group of Dudleyas that have that ability. And yes, those will root from those colleen leaves.
And Patricia Evans says that she grows Dudleyas in strawberry pots, and they like growing out of the pockets at an angle like they do growing on cliffs. And I've read that too, that if you grow them put them at an angle, water won't set in their leaves.
Exactly. And that's what they do in the wild. You'll often see them sideways. One other, variegata, which I don't have. There's three subspecies of Blockmanii: Insularis, brevifolia, and Blockmanii. Multicaulis, Nessiotica, and variegata are all the ones in the Hasianthus group. That's the smallest Dudleya subgenus.
I just bet once we can travel again, if you get to the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden or Theater Payne, if you make an expedition down to the LA area, you can probably find people with a lot of different species of Dudleya.
One I didn't show in the slideshow was Saxosa, which is the desert one. That's a really interesting species. It takes so little water.
Oh, the place that I was trying to remember the name of that had some really large specimens of Dudleya was Highway 92 Succulents in Half Moon Bay.
Hmm.
And
there are quite a few of Baja ones only. So yeah, I'd say probably 20% of the Dudleyas grow in Baja.
So the trick with getting back to being successful with Lewisias is they grow best here in pots, and you have to give them good drainage.
Good drainage, and don't fertilize them real heavily. Once again, they're growing on rocks.
As I had some that were doing well, and they're kind of petering out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that one I showed you, I've had that for 6-7 years at least.
They flower once a year, right?
Yeah, typically. They can flower for a fairly long time during that period. They'll send up inflorescences. Depends on how much water they get.
Okay. So here's a question, when you take the flower off of a Dudleya deadhead, do you remove the stem with the calling leaves? Calling leaves.
Okay, you're taking the stem off after it's gone to flowering seed?
I think that's what they're referring
Okay.
to.
Typically, when you come to a plant that has gone to seed, that all comes off very easily. If you go sideways, it'll just come right off the plant. Or you can break it off if you don't want to mess with the rosette at all.
Okay. And do you deadhead yours or do you leave them on?
I do remove the old flowers every year because otherwise they begin to look kind of ratty.
So do you wait till they're kind of dried up, which is when I do it?
Yeah, exactly. It'll be like late summer, just before the growing season. And watch out, by the way, if you have them, they hybridize like crazy in a greenhouse. If you want to get good seed from your plants, you want to make sure that they don't pollinate around. You separate the one you want to do it, or the ones you want to pollinate, over here, and then set the seed.
So someone's looking for terracotta strawberry pots. So if anybody has any tips, why don't you put that in the chat? Patricia Evans has put some tips in there. And there's someone asking about the Lingso nursery mix. Is that the same as potting mix? I'm not quite sure.
No, it's not quite. It's a little bit different, but you know, any of them work. That's the one I use. It doesn't have to be that.
No, I saw in one succulent book that people suggested mixing some vermiculite into cactus, potting soil for a good mix, and I bought a big bag from a stable place because it's much cheaper that way. Do you ever use vermiculite in your potting mixes?
No, I don't, because I tend to leave plants in their pots don't repot them for as much as a decade or two. And vermiculite will break down to be a clay. And I don't want clays in my pot.
Well, maybe that's what happened to my Lewisia.
Yeah, because what that does is the one reason you want to have that porous soil is those roots need air. And if you have something that's too dense, the air goes away and then the roots die.
Okay. So, we have, the Watershed Nursery, Oaktown Nursery, that's Richmond and Oakland. East Bay Wilds in Oakland, Yerba Buena in Half Moon Bay, Central Wholesale in San Jose usually has them. In addition to the ones, Highway 92, our native plant nursery. I haven't looked recently, but it's quite possible that Tilden, the East Bay CNPS probably sells some Dudleyas. And I know that I have bought a lot of Dudleyas at the Santa Cruz chapter's plant sales.
Yeah, well, there's a woman down in, I don't know if she still does it, California Succulents down near Watsonville. I think she lives in Freedom. But she used to grow a bunch of Dudleyas too, along with Steve McCabe. They kind of work together with it.
Oh, and also UC Berkeley Botanical Garden store. And, it is interesting because a lot of times one does have to sort of make field trips to get the native plants that you crave.
Yeah.
You can't rely on getting them. But, from time to time, I have seen summer winds with Dudleyas, typically Pulverenta and Simosa. I mean, they're not always named, but that's what they look like. Steve
McCabe has actually been doing hybridization to improve on some of these. He has some that are very red. He has some that are very succulent leaves. He's crossed pachyphytum with others and come up with these things. And he's probably willing to get those into the trade.
Okay, so there's a question, should we add parasitics, lichen, and mosses to our soil? How to acquire? I'm not sure what is that maybe in relation to those pictures you showed?
Oh, yeah.
Habitat?
I don't think you can do that very readily. It's just, yeah, it's very pretty in the wild, but reproducing that kind of community in your garden would be difficult.
Okay,
that's why I love to go out and look at natural rock gardens, because they are so fantastic.
And I just want to remind people that when you go out on hiking and you see Dudleyas, don't post pictures with geographic information because of Dudleya poaching.
Yep, absolutely. Don't let those poachers know where you find them.
So strip out the geographic information before you post them on social media. Another question: can I repot a Lewisia while it is blooming? Someone thinks I should give it faster draining soil.
I'd wait until the dormant period in the summer. They're less likely to die if you're doing them during the dormant period, and then, but when they're trying to grow, they don't probably want to have that disturbance.
Okay. Did I get all the questions, Arvind?
Yes, we are caught up with the YouTube questions.
Okay, that's great. So also, do you have any tips on growing cactus in pots in our area, besides like keeping it, I see what I'm doing wrong is not taking them out of the rain.
Yeah.
Is that the main thing?
That's the main thing. Just most of them are not winter cacti. The one exception is dioica that grows on the coast of Baja, and it gets all the rains in the winter and none in the summer. So it's an oddball. But most of them grow in places where it's winter dry, summer wet. And not very wet, mostly thunderstorms.
Okay. All right, so that's the trick. Try to, if they're out in the summer, put them someplace where they're sheltered from rain in the winter.
Yep, just find a place where it's sheltered. And you can have one outside in a pot and it does fine.
So do you also have any tips for repotting cacti? I have a really nice, I think a Echinoceras, about barrel cactus that I got quite a while ago from a reputable nursery. And it has grown to fit its pot. It's been in the pot for about 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to put it in a new one, but I can't get it out. And I don't know if I'm going to break the pot. Any tricks?
You might have to break the pot. That is something that is, if it's a clay pot, you might not be able to get it out because the roots go along the side and just bind themselves to it.
Even a glazed pot, even the glaze, because this one was glazed.
Oh, it's glazed when they won't. That shouldn't happen then. If the one thing you have, of course, is the spines, you need to wrap that all up, try and get it upside down and tap the pot and pull it off. See if you can do that. It's not easy.
So you wrap it in blankets?
You can wrap it in blankets, newspaper, whatever you can to cover the spine so you can hold on to that part without being killed, and turn it upside down, tap it, and let it try and fall out of the pot. It's not easy. It's frustrating. I have broken many pots. Okay.
Well, I think we have come to the end of our questions. So I want to thank everyone for coming, and thank Paul for sharing his expertise and wonderful pictures. And Vivian, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we close?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my thanks. Boy, Paul, I really, really appreciate you doing this. That was amazing information, amazing pictures, just fabulous. So thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm sorry I mentioned though where some of those Dudleyas were. But you ought to go out and look at them. We're all non-collectors, right? We just go out and enjoy them.
Yes, that's why people were asking where to buy them. Responsibly grown, nursery, cultivated Dudleyas. That's what all of the people watching tonight want, right?
Yes. So people are lusting for Dudleyas and they want to find places to get them reputably.
Yep.
And
like
also, the more we buy Dudleyas, the more we support the trade. And if there's enough propagation of Dudleyas, hopefully it will reduce the cost and reduce the attraction of poaching.
Yep.
Yeah. And actually, I want to give a shout out to CNPS on Dudleya, addressing the Dudleya poaching problem. We've been advocating for it, and there's currently a legislator, Chris Lewis, down in San Diego, who has put in legislation that's still to be voted on that actually increases the penalties for doing Dudleya poaching. And so we will be putting more publicity up when that comes up for a vote to help people, advocate for passage of that legislation. But, the CNPS, that is one of our mandates, is protecting native plants. And this is one place where we've really been working hard to try to make sure, because it's a huge problem and it's just wreaking havoc really on the environment, not just on Dudleyas, but on the habitats where they live. So
yeah.
Yeah, because people trample over everything when the poachers don't care.
They drive trucks over things. I mean, it's just appalling. Do you know that they used to actually put type localities of plants in the journals, and the Germans would come out and wipe out every one of them at the type locality within a couple of months?
Oh my God.
It was just awful. You'd have, here's a new cactus species, and boom, the type locality was wiped out, So, yeah.
Okay, then. Well, I think, again, Paul, thank you. Thank you for answering all the questions. Thank you for, the whole thing was terrific. And I'm going to be ending now, but we do have another talk coming up next Wednesday with Tim Krantz on rare plants. So hope to see some of you next week. And thanks again for showing up. Bye-bye.